Welcome to the Gentlemen's Club Podcast, episode 40 Fizzle, I think.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, get my vibe. See? All right, we good now. This is your boy Cardell reporting live from the Gentlemen's Club Podcast basement. Sitting here with...
It's your girl, Amanda.
Over there in the back.
Hey guys, it's me, Zach.
Welcome. How the fuck are you guys? How's everybody doing?
I'm doing great.
Just great. Cool.
Like I said, I did drink a little bit too much yesterday. Yes.
I can't lie. That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
I support.
But
As long as you had fun.
Right.
Thank you. I am feeling hydrated.
Okay.
And feeling better. So
Okay.
how are you, Zach?
I am recently discovering that I'm not sure if I like my voice on this podcast. So, you know.
Whoa. Hold the
you
fuck
might
on.
hear me talk, not on this particular day, but you might hear me talk less.
Please dive deeper into that.
Just a little bit. And there's not much to expound on, but give me a little bit because we did all of this talking, and I'm glad that you didn't just mention it.
I've been listening and going through, obviously, as you all know, we have a new intro clip for this podcast. Hope you guys enjoy it. And as I was doing so, I was also listening to audio. Why did that stop? I don't know why that stopped. Okay. I was listening to audio of myself, and I was like, I don't know if I like how that sounds.
Really?
You guys sound great. We got some leveling issues that I think we've corrected now.
Okay.
So.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know.
You're not saying like what you said, but you're saying how you said it?
Oh, no, just I don't like how my voice sounds.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was like, people compliment all the time what you say, so.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
I mean, like now when you look in the mirror, are you satisfied with how you look? Like this isn't a deep insecurity issue, right?
So I'm going to let everybody in on a little secret. I am a bit shallow of myself. I think very highly of myself. I'm a bit conceited.
No fucking way.
I am a bit conceited, but that being said, I don't, except for with my close friends, I'm pretty modest.
To a degree.
I love that energy, though. I think that everyone should be like that in a little bit, in a humble way.
Yeah,
You know
for
what
sure.
I mean?
I agree.
I do see imperfections in myself every day when I look in the mirror.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no.
You got to be confident, though.
Oh yeah.
I love learning new things about you guys every day. This is great.
Okay, Ash, how are you?
I'm distraught.
I'm upset.
Yeah, I'm bothered. I am discouraged from even being a podcaster going forward.
Wow.
To be real with you,
Talk that shit, man. So talk that shit, man.
But as you guys, as some of you might have heard, the Joe Budden Podcast is not what it once was. The co-hosts Roy and Maul are no longer a part of the podcast. There's been a few little clips and situations. Some of these things have surfaced to where you guys have seen that Joe's having some issues as he's trying to grow the brand, being a network, being a quote unquote CEO. And it was sad. It was sad to see that things are going the way that they went.
Let me interrupt.
Yeah, go ahead. Do your thing.
I want to explain this. We're not going to play any clips from the podcast because I have been paying attention all weekend and watching videos that have clips from the podcast get pulled all weekend. So
he's got a team on that,
No, it's a big thing over there.
Because of that, I cannot, for the sake of this channel, I'm not going to include any clips. We're going to explain this the best way that we can on our own.
Okay.
So do a little summary.
I can try to. Basically, what is the best way to go about saying this? Eventually, at a certain point, the podcast it seemed to have some tension publicly on the actual episodes.
As avid listeners, regular listeners, Ashton and myself,
Facts.
You can tell when there's a tone shift. You can tell when people aren't given the same level of energy or people seem disinterested.
Right.
And for the last, what'd you say, 5 months?
Yeah.
Wow.
I can get that.
For the last 5 or so months, it just kind of seemed like things were a bit weird. There were some tells that
That if
by themselves,
it's
don't
not
seem
that
like
big
a whole lot.
But if you're paying attention to everything and the culmination of it all, you just like
The chemistry was off.
Yeah, it started to feel that way, and I gotta give them credit for the way that they were able to continue to make it work after finding out all the things that was going on behind the scenes, like I got to commend them on that. Like me and you talked about that like heavily. I was like, yo, fam,
they still tried.
If all of this shit is going on behind the scenes and I still come in here and make it seem like we the best of friends, like kudos to you for real. Like deserve credit for that. But I don't know, man. I'm just so upset internally that I'm having trouble finding my.
So I can do a quick breakdown, even though I just told you I hate the sound of my voice. So more or less, about a month, maybe a month and a half ago, Rory and Maul were both absent from an episode of the Joe Budden Podcast. Joe explained it as he asked Rory to, take a break from the podcast, and Maul basically didn't agree with it, and he decided he was going to take a break as well.
Right.
Joe said, their seats available. Can't wait for them to get back. We're going to get this figured out.
Right.
Yeah. Yada, 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 blase, blase. As a fan of the podcast, I just took that at face value, and it was like, all right, they'll be back, whatever, and kept listening. And, Joe had two of his friends, Ish and Ice step in, and,
fuck with both of them.
Yeah, no, they're great guys. This actually has nothing to do with them
whatsoever.
But more or less, and I told you this, I'm really not interested in catching up to the podcast until I know they're coming back, which I ultimately ended up doing before I knew they were coming back. But regardless, I'm a fan of the collective, not one individual on the podcast.
Facts.
Fast forward, they come back and they have a transparency episode as far as everybody's perspective is what happens.
Right.
And before they have their transparency, they make it clear that they've talked it out, they've made up, there are no issues. And in that episode,
there were issues. Yeah, for sure.
There were mad issues. They were holding back from going full blown argument.
You could tell
on the podcast. It was like, all right, I thought y'all said y'all were cool.
Yeah,
like
no,
is this the podcast live?
It's not live.
It's not live.
So he chose to put that out there.
It's recorded the day before.
That's a good point.
But to be real,
like this podcast.
one thing that they are good for, I won't say they. Joe loves to try to come off as transparent as possible. He likes to share personal details and things like that. I love that.
And I'm sure the views were like with that tension.
Yes,
came a lot of views. As well.
One thing about Joe, he knows how that system
business,
works.
right?
But Joe also likes anarchy.
That's a fact. He loves
part of the reason why
chaos.
that podcast blew up was off of him having an extreme take off of a Drake album.
That's a fact.
And being incredibly extra about it. So even if this doesn't sound very well as far as if you're trying to say that, oh my God, sounds so different. Even if you say that everything's all good before you record, leave me alone.
All right.
Even if you say everything's all good, before you start the podcast, there was this really bad energy on that episode that they recorded that I'm going to be honest with you. If I care more so about the overall stake of our friendship and the business as us going forward, I'm not putting that episode out. That's my opinion.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. I respect that.
I would honestly, hearing how that argument was going on, and you can listen to the Joe Budden podcast yourself if you want to. This is not a plug. Hearing how that conversation went on, at some point, somebody should have said, yo, turn these fucking mics off, man. We still got to talk clearly.
Yeah.
Turn these fucking mics off because we still got to talk.
That's true. There was a specific point where Joe, basically, for those who don't know, Maul and Roy have absolutely helped the Joe Budden podcast become what it is today. Without them,
Rory has literally been there from the beginning, and Maul has been there since before it was hot.
Right. And
that's hurtful.
On the Makeup podcast, the Transparent podcast, they talked about, Joe said something to his co-host Maul and was like, Maul was asking questions about the podcast, and Joe was like, well, that's none of your business. And to say that to somebody who's been there, not only are we friends, got it out the mud, lived together, been to jail, done all this and that.
Oh, they're lifelong friends.
Yeah, it's deep.
Maybe not life, but they've been friends long before this podcast ever existed.
Exactly. So it's deep enough for that. But to say that to your homeboy who has been with you through some thick and thin type shit and has helped get this podcast hot, for you to look at me and say that that's none of my business, like, the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, none of that stuff I didn't agree with that.
And that's embarrassing. Like, that's an embarrassing thing to say.
Bro, you realize how that can make somebody feel? It's like, bro, like, things was getting kind of stale with
like, stay out of your lane. Like, stay in your lane kind of thing.
And eventually, as things started to grow and become bigger, and the spaces that Joe is getting into, he's starting to develop that typical CEO mindset that you hear about certain people when they get to these levels. It's just like, all right, well, you just a worker, dog. Like, I started this, I came up with this, I did that. And like,
it becomes a power trip.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to say that Joe doesn't have a lot of responsibility on him with his network and everything else.
I can only imagine.
And trying to build the money and et cetera, but there are still certain level of responsibilities that you should be upheld to.
Right.
If you agree to a profit sharing deal with those two gentlemen, you have to uphold that. And even more so, if you are really friends with them, then just do good business.
Facts.
I will say that the reason why this podcast exists is partially due to the Joe Budden Podcast.
Inspiration.
It inspired us to finally just say, you know what, fuck it, we're going to do it. But this is something that me and Ashton have talked about for years.
Bro, and to be real with you, this is kind of, aside from you, I've had conversations with all my people. Like, bro, we need to turn this into a podcast. The conversations that we have, the breakdown of music, the issues and things that guys don't get to speak on, that women don't get to speak on, all of these things, like, this is a somewhat more of a filtered version of it, but that was always there. And it's just like, if you get to watch somebody that I personally respected as an artist do that and actually turn their homeboys' conversations, just kicking it, into a profitable conglomerate.
Yeah, that's the dream.
Bruh.
Absolutely.
Bruh, I do this every day.
Exactly. I do this for free.
Yeah, my people be tired of me like, bro, I'm not trying to break down this album with you on a Friday night. I'm about to go out. Like, some of my people can tell you, like, nigga, I want to talk about all these different issues extensively all the time.
Yeah.
So how do we change this to a teachable moment? I want to start by saying this. To all
respect is important.
It's absolute.
If somebody ever look at you and say that respect is not the first thing that I give my friends, you need to watch that person.
For sure.
That's a fact. And I love Joe. Everybody thinks that I'm completely with Joe 1,000% with everything that he does. No, I just know who.
Same.
I just know.
Same.
But
I'm
I
getting
just
those same.
Yeah.
What's your boy doing now?
Yeah,
it's like whoa.
Hey, that's how the text messages always start. I guess your boy out here tripping. It's like, all right, relax, man. Like, here's the thing: when you know who somebody is, you can just choose to accept the pieces of them that you agree with.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily have to support everything that he does.
And they're human beings.
That's a fact.
At the end of the day,
they are allowed to make mistakes.
I'm not a worshiper of a single.
I don't worship a single man.
I don't believe in that. So, but I will say this for other podcasters, because we're not the only podcast that's influenced by the Joe Budden Podcast and other podcasts, obviously. But I will say this: get your business right.
That's a fact.
This has been said on many platforms about many different things, and even on the Joe Budden Podcast. Get your business right.
That's a fact.
If you have a podcast with your friends right now that is making zero money, get your business right.
That's a fact.
Because I promise you, that conversation gets 10 times more difficult once money is involved.
That's a
As
fact.
a person that has employed my close friends, been my close friend's boss, been a close friend's landlord,
right?
Have these conversations early.
Early.
Right. Yeah.
Because once money gets involved, shit gets muddy.
Fact.
It gets incredibly muddy. And those conversations become incredibly difficult.
Yep. That's a fact. There was another point, and my mind's not working right now, but there was another point just about, is there more to the story that we should expound on, do you think? Joe basically, they fall out.
So now he's like a single dude on this podcast.
He's got feelings.
He's got feelings.
He has gas.
The thing is, though, after a certain point, a lot of behind the scenes, Joe gets onto the podcast and he wanted to show that his co-hosts weren't there. And he was basically trying to set this narrative that everybody abandoned the podcast, that they're trying to make sure that the accounting was right, that the whole reason that they fell out was money. And it's
that's
like
manipulative. That's very manipulative to say.
It's even more so when you hear their other side of it, when their argument is, you told us to stay away.
If you say, hey, let's take some time off, and then that's like Zach saying, hey, things been kind of off. Let's just take a couple days off or something like that.
And let us be transparent. This podcast has not been perfect, and we've obviously had some issues. Like, granted, and this is no offense to Amanda, there's clearly somebody else that used to sit in that seat that's not here anymore.
Facts.
So we've never talked about it on this podcast because we don't need to, because there's no bad blood there.
Exactly.
But when you air out your laundry like that, it makes shit messy.
Yeah.
And maybe that's another thing you have to talk about when you have a podcast. How transparent are we going to be on the podcast? Because a lot of people like feel responsible to their viewers to say, hey, this is what's going on. And then you might agree as a co-hosting group and say, hey, we're not going to air out our dirty laundry.
Right.
You know, it's all in what you agree to at the beginning or
True.
whatever. But those things get messy when some dramatic happens.
1,000%. So Joe basically goes on and starts saying that, you know, they didn't show up and they're mad about money, and I can't lie, he said some things, and I know Joe to a degree. I think I do. As a fan of his music, and
you've seen his behaviors.
I've watched his patterns happen multiple times over, and everybody says this about Joe. It's like, man, damn, Joe, you Joe'd it. Like, you fucked it up. Like, you did this, and that. And
like, he got his ego. His ego got to him.
His ego is crazy, man. Like, and everybody just kind of chops it up with like, shit, well, that's just Joe. And you choose to love whatever parts of him that you choose to love. But after that happens, I'm just like, okay.
And it's crazy because you guys have an emotional attachment.
I'd be lying to say that I don't, just because
it makes total sense.
Yeah, but going forward, eventually Rory and Mal sit down and they start breaking down what actually happened.
Oh, okay.
And to be real with you, like, I can't never, when Joe told Mal that respect, it ain't about respect, like, that let me know that Joe is no longer in that mind state. He's in the mind state of business. I'm a CEO, fam. I'm being mentored by Diddy to a degree. Like, fam, I don't give a fuck about your feelings, nigga. This is a business. Show up to the job or not. But it's like, you guys aren't robots. They're not robots. I know, but the whole center of the podcast was built on the chemistry that you guys had as in a friendship.
Not only that, but it's off of freedom from the corporations. And
bro, that's been your pick since the beginning.
Being told that exact same thing. Like, Joe's been told, go to work.
Yeah.
Fulfill your contract, et cetera, et cetera. And now it's funny to see him on the other side of that, playing that role. It's like, all right, well, then you owe Shady a slaughterhouse record.
Bro, you owe them a few things if you're keeping it real. And it's like, it's always so interesting. We can get into this towards the latter half, but it's so interesting how a lot of the things that people will fight against or whatnot, eventually you start to mirror some of those things. And it's always interesting to see how people change in that aspect, how they look at things, their perspective on things. And it's like, sometimes you need your closest people to tell you, like, yo, bro, you're turning into or treating, people like the opposite of what you're trying to go against.
Yeah. And you need someone in your corner that's going to not be a yes man to you and be a, hey.
Man, money.
That's the most difficult thing, though.
Someone of that caliber, right?
Right.
Well, period. It's figuring out. It's really hard to figure out if your friend's a yes man or not. At that level of fame.
And
you think you'll notice it right away, but especially when you're successful, you think every move is the right move.
True.
So you wouldn't think that anybody's going to disagree with you.
Or if the other person, let's say there's 3 people and one friend feels this way about this friend and the other friend feels this way about that friend, that really depends on the relationship between each individual. If I'm treating you well as a friend, then of course you're going to have nothing but positive things to say about me.
Yeah.
But if I did something dirty to you,
like, that's how he moves.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And to be honest with you, 2 things can be true.
For sure.
And you could have just caught that person at a bad time. It doesn't necessarily define that person, but there's a lot of behavior that's kind of showing things to be different.
I think the thing of it is that if that person, he obviously did something shady. If you can't have accountability for yourself, that's where those relationships can't be repaired.
That's true, and I agree with you. But to be real, I think that once you get to a certain point, people will write you off.
Yeah.
Like, and before I make that personal, it's just like I'm a reformed fuckboy in every sense of the word. Like, I've treated women terribly. I've done shady things to friends. all of these things have happened, but do you know me to my core? Do you know where my heart actually lies? And if you do, then you can respect that and distance yourself. But sometimes when you hurt somebody in a certain way, bro, they write you off forever as this person. And having to rebuild your reputation or relationships with whoever you deal with, that shit is difficult.
But have you, okay, let me ask you. So like, I totally understand, but have you come back, like you said that you're retired now.
Yeah. Reformed.
Reformed.
Right.
That's a great word.
Yeah,
That's
I
a
like
better
that.
word.
I like that better.
So my thing is that have you gone back now and taken accountability and apologized to certain people or even the people that wrote you off?
The whole reason why I say that is because that's a big thing for me. When
you have done that.
Yes. For an example, like when Joe went through all of this shit, he's airing shit out. He's talking to his friends wild. He's trying to make some of his homeboys seem like they were some bums on the street.
Okay.
He picked them up, and you know what I mean? It's a lot of ego. It's
his
a lot of
co-hosts that you're saying.
It's a lot of you're nothing without me.
Yeah. It's a lot of that kind of energy. And
yeah, that's gross.
the thing that's difficult is the reason why I spoke to that is because when you do try to go back and, this is where I feel like I was wrong. And you have to kind of leave it at that because you can't really bring in where you feel like you were done wrong by them at that point. They're still upset with you.
Yeah.
There's time that has to pass.
Yeah.
We were talking about this on a completely different subject.
Yeah.
yesterday,
There needs to be time that passes for that person to sit and actually reflect on the things that they did. I try to do that a lot.
And it's much easier to reflect on the things that you did when someone apologized first.
Exactly. and it's like I try to do that a lot. And there's been a lot of times where some people accept the apology. They might not believe it, but they accept it. We move forward. Then there's other times where they have no intention on accepting that apology at all. There's times where they said that they accept, forgive me, but then they're real still, giving me the side eye and waiting for me to do something. And then it's like, if there's anything that resembles that, it's like, oh, you never changed. You still the same. You know what I mean? Like all of that energy, all of that stuff happens.
Mm-hmm. And I think that goes back to, there's just some people that, like, if you've wronged them, and I've obviously wronged a lot of people too. If you
no way,
right? if you
tell me more.
Oh,
I'm not gonna be specific. No. But if I've wronged anybody, like I think they have the right to, like. Some people, like, I don't deserve to be in their life after what I did, maybe. Okay. You know what I mean? I mean, right. I've never done, look, I don't want to, like, I've never done anything like that serious, but I'm saying, like, they might feel like this is toxic energy no matter how much she's reformed. This is toxic energy. Does that mean they should go around and bad talk me? No.
That
but
happens.
They have their right to.
Yeah.
Because I did wrong them, and that keeps me from wronging people in the future.
That's true.
Because of the way that they move differently now.
Right. That's definitely a lesson in that for sure.
Yeah. So I think, like, I think everybody has their choice. Like I said, there's people in my life that have wronged me to the point where I said, I don't care. I wish this person the best.
Right.
But there is no way I would ever speak to this person again.
And that is your right. Once you get to that point, it's just, there's nothing to it. But
I will say, sometimes I'll say, you know what, this person really hurt me, but they apologized. That doesn't mean I don't think they're, recovered. But I'll say that. I'll be like, you know what, they took accountability.
Right.
And that's good for them. But I won't speak to you, but good for you.
Right. And that's true. That's very true.
So.
Zach, did you have anything else that you wanted? Anything else you wanted to add to the Joe Budden situation specifically?
Not necessarily to the Joe Budden side of it. I guess I want to try to turn this into a lesson as far as like everything else, because everything we do, we try to give lessons here.
The moral of the story,
right?
If you're going into business with your friends, and Ashley and me, you had this conversation the other day.
Facts.
It's not for everybody. It's fucking difficult. I would venture that 95% of people are not capable of actually working with their friends in a successful business without having any level of financial issues or fall through things of that nature. That leaves 5% of people. Now, granted, only 5% of people can do it. That doesn't mean that the whole 5% is going to do it.
Right.
So the percentage of successful businesses where friends started and they end up and everything is okay is slim.
Right.
I'd probably put that at a 1%.
Do you think it's better to go into business with somebody who isn't your friend, who's just business?
Check this out.
Feelings don't get hurt.
That's true. It's a safer route to just do good business with other people that do good business and not necessarily your friends. but
You don't have the chemistry in the heart.
I'm not like that. I want to be in that 5%. I'm going to strive to do that the best way that I can.
And then your friendship comes first.
I believe that it is possible. I believe that where my heart is, I believe that it's possible. And I'm actually willing to go out of my way to make sure that that happens.
Look at you and Zach. That's so cute.
I tell you, I
love that.
I have worked with friends that do not respect the boundaries of work and friends. It's like, look, man, I brought you in. There's a certain, like, if I bring you into a job, you think that, oh, I got it easy. I'm cool with the boss. No, motherfucker, I need you to work harder. Actually.
Oh, that's a
Even,
good.
yeah, even more so.
Because I need
Because
you
that's
to
my
validate.
reputation.
Yeah,
Right.
I need you to validate the choice that I made because, hey, this is my friend. I'm bringing him in. He's going to, you want another one of
It's
me?
on
I'm
you.
bringing one of them in.
It's on
And then
you.
when you're the laziest person on the floor,
Bruh, you realize the superiors are looking at me.
I have to cut you immediately.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because you mess. Oh, okay. So check this out, though. Actually, I don't know if I want to go that way.
Okay.
Can I compliment you guys again, though? I remember I complimented you on the first episode.
Right.
I think one of the greatest things about this podcast, and now I'm a part of it, so I'm biased.
You are a part of it.
Yeah, but
I don't want to talk about it.
I'm hurt, bro.
We're not going to talk. We're not
I've heard
going to
you.
be that transparent today.
Right. I got you.
No, but one of the things that attracted me to this podcast was your guys' vulnerability, but I could see the chemistry on screen. I feel like, and when I listened to it, I really felt like there was care there.
Oh, for sure.
And I think, and I'm just saying that I think, I totally agree is that friendship, when you have a friend in your business is difficult, but that's the heart of the podcast. And I think when you're so vulnerable in a podcast, you have to have that trust that someone's going to be like, no, bro, that was good.
Yeah.
Especially when you're doing something like this.
Yeah.
Chemistry is important.
Bro,
Yeah.
it changes everything.
It's
because
so much easier to have the chemistry when you're actually cool with somebody.
Yep, you don't have to fake it. That can get exhausting. I don't know how a lot of people do that.
Because
I'm sure the money helps. but
radio stations, they put a random group of people in a room
And them
they
niggas hate
hope,
each other. Yeah,
they
hate
hope
each
it works.
they hate each other, though.
And the things that go behind the screen.
The wildest shit in the world is like, bro, I would never talk to that person again. But it's like, you don't have a choice because there's a check there. That's your job. So
Yeah,
before that ever gets messed up, nah, man, let's make sure that our friendship is what it is. Constant checking in, constant over communication. I love that shit.
Yeah, and that's what you guys are like. That's what's so great about this podcast is that you guys overly communicate in a positive way.
The thing about this podcast is that the conversations that we have on this podcast are conversations that happened when the cameras and the microphones were not on.
Fact.
Some great conversations.
Probably.
Yeah.
Oh, and you've been a part of it.
Yeah,
Some
for
of the
sure.
best conversations haven't even been recorded. They're upstairs in the kitchen.
Facts.
And Ashton looks at both of us and says, "Stop talking."
Shut the fuck up. Stop saying shit. We're putting it on a podcast. All of the above, man. All of the above.
That's the actual conversation that we've had.
One thing I do want to try to touch on, and not saying that we can go super deep with it, but Joe's perspective when he did the pod, and then the actual truth from Maul and Rory. And there's three sides to a story. But because I pay attention and I'm so invested into this podcast, I realize that there's probably a lot of truth in the things that Rory and Maul were saying. But I don't feel like we touch enough on what it's like for somebody else's perspective and then the next person, how they see things and how they view things. Like, people are not coming together and meeting in the middle as far as like, this is how I feel. I could feel this way and psychoanalyze you and wait for you to fuck up, but I'm not really sharing with you how I feel.
This goes back to a previous podcast episode that we had where we talk about perspective.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
The movie theater.
the movie theater theory. You can view something completely different. We have the exact same conversation.
Right.
You view it one way.
Right.
I view it another way.
Right.
And it's a really tough ability to be able to take yourself out of the situation and actually view the conversation as what it was.
Right.
And sometimes it's really hard because sometimes you hear shit that you want to hear.
That's a
And
fact.
you don't hear what you don't want to hear.
That's a fact.
And when someone disrespects you, that's all that people focus on.
People are really human when they're offended or when they feel disrespected. So it's like, fam, it don't even matter what you say at this point. This is what I heard, and this is what I'm holding on to. And when you get into those spaces where people feel a way about you, the easiest way for that to snowball is when those people are talking amongst themselves and not necessarily talking to you. I don't feel like you get any resolution.
My literal pet peeve is when people cannot be direct. I have so much, I cannot understand how you can talk to everybody else about a situation that involves
I'm about
me
to flip this fucking table.
And you know what?
I feel it.
No, I think so. I don't know if you guys know. We could talk about this at another episode, but the Enneagram with the personalities. Do you guys know about this?
I have no idea. Tell me more.
Okay, I'll just briefly explain.
know.
So there's an Enneagram test. Everyone should do these tests. It's like I think there's about 10 different personalities, and each personality, like you take a test and you get a personality. I'm an 8, and you sound like an 8 as well.
Gang, gang.
Because disrespect is my number one thing. Like if I'm disrespected, I'm out. Like, you know what I mean? And so for me, and I'm very confrontational.
Gang, gang.
Not meaning like, I mean, I can be disrespectful, but I usually try to be just like, hey, let's figure this out immediately because I don't want to drag this.
Right. You can get it out the way.
Yeah. And so for me, like, I cannot stand when people, like, I want to know what I did to hurt you so I can fix it.
Here's where I think this is going to be my last part of being transparent. I want to address with my people that I fuck with and that I love. I want to address whatever issue you have with me.
Yes.
When I've tried to address the issue and you choose not to be transparent about how you feel, but then you have a lot to say around other people, that is like the ultimate disrespect for me. That feels like the betrayal because
you're an 8.
I'm not scared to talk about let's talk about this. If you know me well enough, you know I love to get into it. To be honest with you, I get a lot of people don't enjoy being friends with me because I always want to try to address shit. So now I'm annoying and I'm over communicative, and now it's just like, bro, I ain't trying to deal with this 8 a.m., bro. Like
all I know is New Year's was fun.
Yo, no, that was super fun. That was super fun. I'll even try to talk.
What happens at New Year's?
Can I say what happened on New Year's?
Yeah.
No, I want to hear about it from your perspective. What happened?
Ashton decided that he wanted to express himself and kind of air out his issues with everybody and kind of remove the tension that he felt was there.
Right.
And
you want to be up front.
Yeah, this is what I wanted to get into.
And I was there, and I personally, me and Ashton, we're pretty transparent with one another. And he came at me with some stuff. I'm like, bro, what are you talking about? we talk every day,
right? No, for real. And I was being emotional in the moment.
Yeah.
But to be real with you, it's just kind of one of those things. It's like, well, damn, why am I excluded from this, and this? And I was trying to explain.
But I kept that a buck with you.
Yeah, for
far as not necessarily myself, because you and me had that conversation. I'm not going to say it on air,
right.
But I told you how sometimes it's perceived as somebody that has empathy. I can not only see it from your perspective,
right.
I can see it from everybody else's perspective as well.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's talent, because I wish I had that. You know, I mean, I'm obviously growing and stuff, but I wish I could have more of that, where I could see multiple sides.
Yeah, it sucks sometimes because it's hard to be a dick.
It does.
Or a moderator, like you have to be a mediator.
One thing that I can speak to is I was definitely emotional about the situation. I'm never going to take away from that, but it really, after this whole issue with Joe and Roy and Maul, it really brought into perspective how other people that were around me, how they might have felt about the situation. Like, well, bro, like the show still got to go on. It's like either you with it or you not. And if you're not with it, the show still's got to go on. And I realize how that can be offensive to somebody if I'm valuing you way more than that, and I want.
If you feel like you're an integral part of it, then it feels like a slap in the face when the show goes on.
Exactly.
You know what? I'm glad you say that, because I didn't mention this when we were talking about this earlier. There are things about the quote unquote split and the business side of it that, from Joe's perspective, I do agree with. Okay. But the show continuing over that span, because they do have a whole team of people that expect and need paychecks,
right?
That you have to keep the show running,
right?
And how it was initially set up to the fans is like, you know what, we're having a little bit of an issue, but we're going to get it figured out. In the meantime, the lights do have to stay on, et cetera, et cetera. That part, and I told you, I'm on board. I just want to see what happens next.
Because there's a whole crew of people that need to be employed.
Right, yeah. And outside of Joe, Rory, and Maul, there are people that expect paychecks for every single episode because they depend on that shit. That is their job.
That makes sense.
So I understood that side of it.
So he has a different kind of responsibility.
Yeah, there is a level of responsibility as far as keeping the show going. Now, that does not excuse doing bad business.
That's true.
If there is something in your in the contract that is not being fulfilled, I have every right to keep coming to you every single day and saying, when am I getting this?
Right. That's a
if
fact.
It's money or accounting or fucking bookkeeping, whatever the fuck you want to call it, if it is owed to me in my contract, I have a right to come to you every single day and say, when am I going to get it?
And you have the right to boycott. Like, you have the right to step down.
Because before I'm in a breach of contract, you're in a breach of contract.
That's a fact. I hear you. Oh, I do want to go back to it because we kind of touched on something personal. I understand both sides of that. It took actually having the conversation, getting how I felt off, and then
you talking about New Year's?
Yes, and then
I'm sorry I brought that up.
No, I actually, that was a point.
It's a vulnerable thing.
No, but you reminded me, because that was the point that I had to think about when that stuff was. Yeah, when it was happening, it was just like, man, I feel like I was feeling like Joe in that sense. It was just like, well, damn, like I thought it was. Actually, I take that back. I was feeling like Rory and Maul to a degree, because I was like, I thought this was an us thing. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And that was all my fault. So like to the people who know what I'm talking about know that it's like we never got a chance to actually have the conversation. Like whenever it was brought up, it was just like the depth of it, the details of it wasn't always necessarily brought up. So please don't think that I'm trying to talk bad on y'all. Y'all know I fuck with y'all a long way. Love y'all regardless.
And sometimes those conversations, it just wasn't time to have them.
Yeah, for sure. And I was being emotional at the time when I brought it up. I'll take that 1,000%. And Joe was doing the same thing. As much as he likes to pretend like he's not emotional, no, nigga, you're emotional. You've been through a lot of shit.
And emotions can come out in anger as well.
It's going to happen, especially when it boils over to a point and you're not talking about the issues.
But I think I think the difference here, and I think what probably one of the biggest issues is that for the sake of image, when he decided to tell that story to the fandom, he dressed it up. I'm not gonna say lied.
Yeah,
I won't use that word.
Yeah,
but you dressed it up.
You try to make it seem like motherfuckers just didn't fuck with you. They didn't show up, bro. If you say this is what we're doing, then we gonna rock with that.
He put some truth in there.
Some,
but he dressed it up.
He spun it.
Yeah,
he spun it. And the thing is like there's two sides to a story. There's three sides to a story,
typically.
But these two sides, I believe the second side. And it as much as everybody thinks that I just love Joe, I'm a diehard, I know that people can be in their own zone. You can be egotistical. You can be narcissistic. You can think that the world revolves around you, and this is what it looks like through your lens.
And I mean, like I said, with that kind of fame, with that kind of power,
bro, and the shit that you went through.
Yeah, and I'm saying like he has accountability to become this kind of brand that he's put out.
True.
You know.
Yeah. And they did.
It was difficult,
and they didn't necessarily. Rory and Maul didn't necessarily speak to that side of it publicly, but as his friends, it's just like, bro, you're probably going through this, and that, but they're supposed to be there. Joe is a wild card. Like that's his personality. He's fully stepped into the shoes of.
Yep.
This is how I am. He definitely tries to show we can be accountable and where he needs to change.
Well, to Rory and Maul's credit, they didn't go on there and try to destroy Joe's character.
What Joe did, that was foul.
They went up there. They went up there and explained their side of the story and what they perceive as, his reaction to everything. Which I'm going to respect them and say that that's their truth. I'm not going to say it's the truth. I'm going to say that's their truth.
Yeah,
it's their perspective.
It's their perspective of the situation. But outside of explaining what happened, they didn't go out of the way and say, you know, fuck Joe, you know, we're going to sue the pants off you. They went out of their way to say, you know what, I wish you success. I hope it does great. I hope you make millions of fucking dollars.
Right.
But this shit is foul.
Yeah, but the way, and even the way that he did the Clear the Air episode, and then he did the next episode, he actually brought a therapist on.
Wow.
And it's little things about Joe that I can respect, because to do that, like, you're trying to show that you're trying to hold yourself accountable. I can respect that motion, but even so, bro, like, your apology was poor, and everybody know Joe's an asshole. He has terrible delivery. He'll say it all day long, but he may or may not have any interest on changing that. Mm-hmm. And now that we got this machine going, bruh.
Right.
Business is business. Get down or lay down.
You think they're going to do a separate?
I fucking hey, look, I hope so. Because to be real with you, Rory and Mal are you love Joe for why you love Joe. Yeah. He's the wild animal at the circus.
They tame him.
Yeah, and you love seeing that.
You can't tame
him. You can't. But I everybody values Joe for the reasons that they value Joe. But Rory and Mal are some of the realest motherfuckers that I know. They make the podcast. I don't know y'all personally, but in the podcasting world, that podcast is the pinnacle.
So I'm going to speak on this address, and then we're going to wrap up.
No, I want to stay here forever.
No, it's not. So Rory and Mal, they had their side address, and that was probably the most I've heard Mal speak about anything ever.
And explains why.
And I enjoyed hearing him talk and being so transparent about something. And on the flip side, Rory is somebody that I connect with on my own personal level, is somebody I relate to. Fuck, man, this dude's only 5 months older than me.
Right.
You know, we grew up in the exact same fucking era. Granted, he grew up on the East Coast and I grew up where I grew up.
Yeah.
But I relate to this dude and his experience.
The most.
And his lifestyle and all that other shit.
And how he looks at things.
And realistically, a majority of the shit that he's gone through in his personal life, at least that he's made available to us as a listenership.
Right.
I've been going through similar things around the same time. So it was like, nigga, I know exactly what you mean.
Right, for real. And
I ran into the fucking Duce Palooza niggas at the club one time. And they said, and I was like, yo, where's Rory? And they said, yo, fam, you know what? Rory can't hang out with the guys no more because everybody knows him.
Right.
He can't just kick it with everybody. And I was like, damn, that's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
But the Duce Palooza boys, I had a section right behind them niggas.
Right.
It was
I can't lie.
12 bottles of Duce on the table.
I can't lie. I've had some I've gone to certain events. I've been to an EO show, Duce Palooza, in hopes to be able to actually possibly just bump into dude and just tell him like, yo, keep doing what the fuck you doing. I much respect to you for a lot of the things that you do and how you move doing them. Mm-hmm. And you know what I mean? It made sense after we had talked about that situation. You know what I'm saying? Like how the things that he deals with and how he can't just go out and kick it.
Right.
But
so anyway, I think it's fair to say that the Joe Budden Podcast, as it has been consumed for the last almost 7 years,
it's no more.
It's no more.
I can't say that I'm going to
7 years.
Yes.
That's wow.
I can't say that I'm going to support it the same way after everything that's gone on. Like, respect Joe, but there's certain things about that situation that I can't really gel with. Mm-hmm. Not that I was shocked when it happened, but it makes me feel away. Whatever Rory and Mal decide to do going forward, 1,000% support. Whatever Joe decides to do going forward, I'll support him to the degree, but I can't say that I'm invested into him as a person as I once was.
Yeah, I'm going to just pay attention to the situation and how it goes forward and just kind of make my decision off of that. But I'm in a very similar situation as you.
Right.
Amanda, thank you for dealing with this episode.
Yeah, I can't even lie. Yeah. Like, yo, get your shit off next episode.
No, I will. But I
appreciate it. I was learning. That's dope. I think that's it. All that we have for right now. This has been episode 45 of the Gentleman's Club Podcast. Almost. All right. We're working on it.
I thought it was going to be a long game.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I did. Yeah. My bad. I fucked it up. I'll do better next time.